So we're going to talk from a biblical perspective about shame, healthy shame. The impairment of healthy shame, which is something we'll call toxic shame or self-contempt. And then the gift of healthy shame, which is humility. And then the need that's met through the vulnerability of healthy shame, which is attunement. I think one of the best pictures in the Bible of healthy shame is in the person of John the Baptist. Now, what I love about John the Baptist was John the Baptist did not hide. He did not hide who he was. He did not hide what he was about. He was a man on a mission. He told the truth. And by the way, people came to listen to him. And the crowds came and got so big, at one point, people were saying to John the Baptist, "Are you the Messiah?" Now, if you're John the Baptist, and they're trying to crown you King of Kings, like, whoo, because by the way, he kind of had that kind of presence.
Yes, he did.
But what I love about his response to that was he said, "Oh, no." He said, "I am not the one to come. I'm not worthy even to tie the laces on his sandals. I'm not Jesus, but I am John." So he didn't hide who he was, and he also didn't pretend who he wasn't. He got to be John.
Yeah.
And there's two sides to that. Part of healthy shame, we're going to see this, is that I actually have something to offer. I have some answers. I have some gifts, God-given, and I bring them. And if I can't own that in my healthy shame, I won't bring them. And I don't have to be more than that. And I can admit that. Because if I can admit my healthy shame, that means also I have need of others and I have need of God, because I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to shame myself that I don't have all the answers and I don't know what I'm doing all the time.
Yeah.
Talk about shame.
Yeah. It's a great intro. Like John the Baptist, Jeff, you're right. He had such an opportunity to grab something, to be powerful. And if we go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, there's a biblical, theological concept that theologians will talk about. One of the big components of the whole arc of Scripture is this thing called the fall, which happened in Genesis chapter 3. And most of us probably know the story. The serpent came to Eve with Adam standing right there, and he suggested to her two things: that something outside of who God made could make both of them okay, and actually even more than they already were. So he suggested to them that something outside of them would make them even better, and that somehow, then the second part of that, somehow because God was holding out. And so they bit the proverbial fruit. And what happened in that moment was they became aware, by their own testimony, they became aware of being naked, and they were ashamed of their vulnerability. And this act of grace, God comes into the garden and summons them, cries out to them, "Where are you?" And we know that's not a question of physical location. He knew full well where they were on the GPS map. He was asking a relational question. He was saying, where are you now? What has happened? And now, where are you emotionally and relationally? And notice that he asked them to speak that out loud, to confess that, not to condemn them, not to rub their faces in it, but to say, "I need you to confess out loud," exactly, Jeff, what you were just talking about. Confess out loud what is happening. What's the story? So as they told the story, remember, they became blame. Adam immediately blamed Eve, and Eve immediately moved it from herself to the serpent. And so what's come from that is this sense of shame, that before that happened in Genesis 3, they were unashamed of who they were, unashamed of how they were made. They related to one another. They related to God individually and together, and they worked productively. They cultivated. Adam cultivated the garden. Eve walked alongside him as his helpmeet, and it was in perfect harmony. And then when this idea that I'm not made right as I'm made, God somehow messed up, and the way he messed up was to deprive me of something. So there's something out here that can complete me. That's when shame hit them. When sin entered the world, shame hit. And so we carry that, unfortunately. But Paul goes to great lengths to say, hey, what Adam did as an act, we carry forward. And then what Jesus did as an act, we too carried that forward when we come to know Christ. And so we have this healthy form of shame in us, this redeemed form that says, hey, and Jeff, you said that really beautifully, like, I can tell the truth about my giftedness. how God made me, back to the garden, how God made me with certain gifts and certain abilities and certain talents. And I've had certain experiences that have honed those things. I can tell the truth about how he wired me to do certain things well. And also part of that wiring is there are things I don't do well. There's limitations that I have. And I tell the truth about that too. And what that is something called humility. And so healthy shame says, I have limitation. I don't know everything. I can't do everything. I need a lot of help in my humanness. And humility is is the gift we receive from that. So therefore, I am limited. And I get to tell the truth about what I'm really good at, what my wiring, how God created me flows out of me, and how God's wiring of me in my humanness. I'm not very good at those things. That's humility. I tell the truth about giftedness. I tell the truth about limitation. And what that reveals is my need for attunement. And man, that is such an important word, Jeff, relationally, like attuning, even right now.
Yeah.
You're attuning to me.
Yeah.
Jeff's looking at me and he's nodding. He's saying, I'm with you. So attunement simply says, I'm with you. I know you're going through something, and I may not be able to define what that is, but in my attunement, I want to hear what it is. So we attune to one another relationally, married couples, friends, with our children back to us, our grandchildren. And so attunement, it gets revealed like when I am in recognition of I'm a limited human being and I need help in my humanness. When someone attunes to me, I'm able to be more fully myself and recognize who God has made.
You know, when we talked about sadness, and I was talking about a story about my grandson, and he told me he was sad. And one of the most important things I said to him initially was, I'm sad too. He showed up very humanly with me,
Yeah.
not ashamed of being sad.
Yeah.
And rather than shaming him and talking him out of being sad to teach him that that's what's wrong with him, he needs to get over it.
Right.
In that moment, I actually honored his sadness. His grandpa feels sad too. That's called attunement, okay? And through that attunement, there was this connection, this deepening of a relationship, and we both moved through it. You know, Jesus even said in the New Testament, he said, it's crazy how when all of a sudden this stuff, it all comes alive. Jesus said, unless you become like a child, you're gonna miss, I'm paraphrasing here, you're gonna miss most of what I'm offering to you in this kingdom. Now, when Jesus said that, he wasn't saying unless you become stupid, foolish, uneducated, childish. Yeah. But a child has something, my grandson has something that grown men and women don't have. Mm-hmm. And he was not ashamed of his neediness. He exhibited a healthy shame, which was the expression of his sadness, and was not condemning himself for being sad. Mm. And then when he showed up with me with that, and then I attuned to him, tuned like a guitar. I play a C chord, he plays a C chord. He plays an A, I play an A. Now we're together. We both move through it together.
Yeah.
And so that's when Jesus said that, he was saying, unless you need me again, go back to what? Go back to pre-fall, when all your needs are met in me. And what they became ashamed of later was that now they did not need God.
Yeah.
And then what happens to me is my toxic shame voice is, when I don't know how to do something, I don't have the answers, I make a mistake. We'll get into guilt later, but like somehow something's wrong with me that I'm not omnicompetent, I don't have all the answers, I couldn't figure it all out, and somehow I'm needy. Instead of being, no, I'm human.
Yeah.
Which isn't a cop-out, it's actually an opportunity for you to fill the gaps.
That's exactly right, through attunement.
Through attunement.
So you mentioned this phrase, toxic shame, and toxic shame is where, by definition, poison, malignant shame is when I do recognize human limitation. I do recognize I need help. I do recognize I can't know and do all things. That recognition becomes toxic or poison to my heart and soul, and I define myself in certain ways. If we raise children by calling them names, calling them soft or sissy or diva or drama queen or all these other words and epithets we can use to describe making mistakes or being human, that child will not molt that off of them when they turn 18 and leave home. They will stick with them. And so if the child is raised that way, when they do mess up, when they do meet with limitation, when they do meet that they don't have omnicompetence or omniscience or omnipresence, when they see that they don't have that, they will revert back to those labels. Maybe not the exact words, but the side of it. For example, for many, many years, I would call myself a lightweight, which meant dumb, unmotivated, no good. Now, no one ever in my life called me a lightweight, but I had enough messages coming from my story that I thought I was surface, not very smart, couldn't really do very much. I better just be relegated to doing some kind of menial something and then just die one day because I'm a lightweight. And it was with a lot of help. It's like, yeah, Phil, you can't do a lot of things. And that doesn't mean lightweight, that means human. And so one part of toxic shame is how I label myself when I have feelings, when I'm met with the world. And another one is just simply despising my humanness. That's where we get this idea of self-contempt. It's like I despise myself because I should be able to do and know these things that I don't know and that I can't do. So the toxic part of healthy shame is when I shame myself and call myself names and label myself a certain way because, frankly, because I'm not God.
Well, it's important to distinguish this because there's so much out there in the ethos around shame, almost like that shame covers all of it. But as someone that has to think biblically through a worldview that's biblically informed, I have to know there's a category for that thing called healthy shame. And then how in the fall, it became toxic shame. Mm-hmm. And that my neediness is not what's wrong with me. My neediness is what allows me to connect to you and connect to God.
Yeah.
Now, I'm old enough to remember a day when people did not acknowledge the dangers of smoking. And then finally they said, no, smoking kills you. As long as, but if you're in the room with someone smoking, you're okay. But whoever's smoking, they're dying, right? And then I remember when it wasn't just good enough that you stopped smoking or didn't smoke, but they finally found that if you were in the room with a smoker and you were breathing the smoke of the smoker, that's called secondhand smoke, that actually there was more danger for the child, especially a child in a room with someone smoking. The secondhand smoke was more damaging than the smoke itself if someone's actually smoking that cigarette, right? Well, that application can be made to this thing called toxic shame.
Yeah.
Okay, a child's born into the world with parents, okay, that are full of toxic shame, condemning themselves for their own vulnerability and lack of being able to have these feelings, okay? Talk about how the power of secondhand smoke in terms of what my parents gave me, like, because we always say, hey, I'm way harder on myself than anybody else. Well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm hard on to the degree that I'm judging myself for having these feelings. I'm judging everyone around me, which is part of that secondhand smoke that kid got. And by the way, that we all got. Talk about that for a second.
That's right. It's the fancy name for that. It's called limbic resonance. And it means just like that secondhand smoke, children, humans, grow up in a particular environment. And we know the physical environment, four walls, a roof, a floor, the color of the paint, the wallpaper, et cetera. That's an environment. But there is a resonance. Rooms feel a certain way. We've all had the experience of walking into a room and no one's saying anything necessarily, but you have this feeling, you think, this thought like, man, this room's tense. Mm-hmm. That's limbic resonance. And so it's like the secondhand smoke example. If a child grows up in a toxic shame environment in which neediness and need and vulnerability were shamed and labeled a particular way, it's like breathing that in like that secondhand smoke. It becomes very damaging because it forms, like this is a kind of a gross example, but just like the smoke forms inside the lungs, that emotional molding forms inside the heart where the seat of appetites, as Scripture calls it. And we begin to get this skewed view of humanness, but in particular our own humanness. And so that brings us really back, Jeff, full circle to the need for attunement. When I'm facing limitation, facing need, when someone attunes to me and says, hey, me too. Like,
me too.
I'm here with you in this. You as Sam, your grandson, I'm here with you in this. And I have feelings about this too. That's the power of breaking that toxicity. And there's a friend of mine is a former city manager here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where we're doing this today. And he said that a person from the Environmental Protection Agency came to town and the Stones River flows through this town. And my friend was asking him, like, what do we do with this pollution? He said, I want to teach you a poem. And here's the poem. Dilution is the solution to pollution. Like, y'all need a good rain to wash these toxins out of this water. In the same way, attunement does that. Attunement, through time, dilutes the power of the toxins as we feel feelings and tell the truth and express that, as we recognize what's happening, we explore what's happening, and we express it in safe relationships. And someone attunes to me, attunes to us, it dilutes the poison, and healing really starts to happen.
And that has to happen in relationships.
Yeah.
Toxic shame grows in dark, closed-in, subfloor type spaces.
Yeah, that's right.
The cure for toxic shame is daylight, relational daylight. So I move into healthy shame even when I can talk openly about the messages that I'm telling myself in a given situation. Okay, which then actually moves me to a possibility of attunement with you. I was with a group of guys a while back, and I was with these guys, and I thought I'm either going to be known by them or I'm going to impress them, one or the other. And I just decided I'm going to do something I've really learned. I said I'm going to lead with my weakness. And I began our time together by just saying, hey, this is who I am, and this is how I got to this type of world of what we're doing, this. Very specific about some ways that I blew up my life and was blowing up my life and all that happened in there. And then I asked them, I said, hey, what were you guys feeling with afterward? I said, what were you guys feeling about me or with me when I was telling you some of this stuff that most people don't talk about? And a couple of the guys said, man, I was drawn to you. I was thinking, man, like I'm more willing now to tell more about me.
Yeah.
It's called attunement.
That's right.
And in fact, one guy goes, whoo, he goes, these are guys that have known each other for decades, right? Another one of those groups. He said, man, I didn't think we were dropping into the basement. So, and I said, I had a choice, either to impress you or to be with you.
Yeah.
And I chose attunement by saying, let me talk about me to you and let's decide whether we can do this. And I said out loud that to myself. Does that make sense when I say that? That's part of how we get into healthy shame in relationships with God and others. And we'll talk about this when we talk about guilt. A lot of times when we talk about guilt, really it's probably shame.
That's right. Yeah. So that's a shame.
Yeah.
Shame is kind of more like an identity as opposed to doing something. So shame, in a bit of a nutshell, shame is just that simple recognition. Theologically, because of the fall, human limitation shows up. Human limitation that says, I do some things really well, God wired me a certain way, and I need you to be with me in both. And as I talk about my weakness and limitation and talk about my giftedness as well. So shame is that very, very human identification feeling that we all need to share with one another.